Hi, welcome to the Cloud Academy Platform Demo webinar. My name is Jermaine Hernandez, and I'm a sales engineer here with Cloud Academy. First and foremost, I do want to say thank you to all of you for your time, whether you're here live with me now or viewing the recording in the future. We really appreciate your time and curiosity in learning more about our platform that we love so much. As you can see, this is a pretty short agenda, so we shouldn't go the full time. Please note that if you have any questions throughout the demonstration, please feel free and encouraged, in fact, to throw them into the chat box. Well, I'll be checking them periodically to make sure that I get all of your questions answered. And so with that, we can get to the good stuff. Let's jump in right into the demo. So Cloud Academy, in case you are unfamiliar, started around 8 years ago, and it had a focus on the end user experience and upskilling. Since that time, we realized that enterprises needed a way to incorporate accountability along with tracking how skills are growing. So we built an enterprise functionality around an already exceptional end user experience. To that end, I thought it'd be beneficial to showcase the administrative features first so that all of you can see what it takes to get the platform up and running. This will also include the reporting that results from that. I'll then jump into the end user side so that you can see precisely what your end users would be experiencing within the platform. And last but certainly not least, we are going to talk about customizing absolutely everything we're about to see. So with that, let's get started. Now, those of you on the call may or may not be administrators of the system. What's important to note about the administrator is they are responsible for provisioning licenses, organizing members into teams, assigning trainings, and perhaps most importantly, you have access to the data across the entire organization. I'm going to jump into this top team here, Acme Partners, to show you the difference between the two roles for the teams themselves. Within a team, each member will be able to be tagged as either a team member, which is simply your end users, or as a team manager. The team manager can be very helpful. I like to consider them pseudo administrators because for any team that they're listed as the manager, they have the same responsibilities. They can edit the team, assign training, and view data for those teams. Once we've organized all of our users into their appropriate teams, we're ready to go to the next step in the platform, which for us is going to be the assessments. So my background is actually in higher education, so I'm a bit of an assessment nerd. I apologize if I get too excited in this part of the webinar. But these assessments are capturing a baseline understanding of where skills lie today. This in turn will help us identify skill gaps in order to better prescribe appropriate training. To show you what the assessments look like, they really come in two types. They come in a written exam format or in a hands-on lab, which in this case will be challenges. I'll point out that the reason these are challenges is that they are completely unguided. We will be viewing a guided lab through the end user side, but these challenges are a way for your end users. We're simply going to tell them, show us you can get from A to Z using your practitioner level skills. So it's really an opportunity for them to prove that they already possess these skills. After that, after they've completed a few assessments, your end users that is, you can jump in here. If you are taking a multi-cloud vendor approach, you can see how you're sorting across all three platforms. Perhaps most importantly, under the skill gaps, is going to be a few core domains and how we're scoring across those. Lastly, both team managers and administrators will have access to the individual assessment score for the end users. In particular, what will be helpful here are those outliers. So somebody that scored lower on the scale might need a little bit more foundational or fundamental work, whereas somebody that knocked the assessment out of the park is ready to jump into something more advanced. Perhaps most importantly regarding assessments, is I mentioned that they are baselining where skills lie today, which is starting to be fed into the skill profiles that we'll see here shortly. The skill profiles are definitely a great part for the administrators. But before I get to the reporting, now that we understand where the skill gaps lie, let's talk about assigning trainings. So training plans can be assigned either to an individual user or to a whole team. I'm going to go the team route. Additionally, you're going to hear me mention both learning path and training plan a few more times throughout the demonstration, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. A learning path is our approach to learning, our learn, validate, and do model. So a learning path is comprised of courses, exams, quizzes, and labs on a certain topic. The training plan is the mechanism to assign various learning paths. So the training plan is where we can really start to take into consideration the accountability aspect. So I'm going to jump in here and assign a training plan. You'll notice that you can very easily filter across platforms or various topics. You're seeing all of our out-of-the-box training plans. If you've customized any content, that will be tagged where appropriate. So I can quickly filter. Perhaps we have a focus on AWS. We are upskilling our security engineers because security tends to be at front of mind. But what I really want you to take away from these training plans, again, is that accountability. What I mean by accountability is based on the content duration for this training plan, administrators or team managers, depending on who's assigning, will be able to dictate what kind of weekly commitment the team can put forward. As I adjust the slider, you'll notice the due date will change with me. Or we can come at this from the other side and say, we have a very important client project due on April 1st of 2021. What kind of weekly commitment is it going to take to ensure that we are prepared? Lastly, the training objectives allow us to align the end users and communicate the value in what it is that they're learning. I'll go ahead and assign this. But one of the things that's going to make the training plans so unique is the ability to sequence them. So we can start stacking these training plans on top of one another so end users can seamlessly move from one into the other. So you'll notice I assigned the initial training plan. It has the date of today's webinar, along with the deadline I set. But now I can begin stacking these training plans as I mentioned. Perhaps now it's a Cloud Architect Starter. And as the end users are completing this first training plan, even if it's well in advance of this deadline, they will seamlessly transition into the very next training plan. Some of our clients, in fact, are scheduling these out for a full calendar year in advance to really try to maintain that momentum towards learning. Of course, one of the other very helpful parts of these training plans is we're going to help you keep track of how individual users are progressing through those plans. So once the end users have started to consume content, we're going to be able to track their individual progress, see some high-level statistics. We'll also be able to see how they're tracking based on that deadline that you set. The system does have automatic nudges that go out when they fall behind, but you also have the opportunity to come in here and manually send a nudge to an end user. Here you're seeing our stock language, but you can absolutely customize this to make it your own. And the final piece that I'll mention regarding training plans is that individual end users will receive a weekly email communicating their progress. The team manager will get a very similar email of the team's overall progress. So really helping you keep track and keep up that momentum, as I mentioned. I'm going to pause here for 1 second just to ensure that there are no questions in the chat. We do have one question asking if the skill assessments can be focused on a specific area, for example, on Azure skills. The answer to that is a resounding yes. So both in the exam side, we can select the Azure exam or do various different Azure challenges. So now that content has been consumed, we're ready to talk about the big payoff, which in this case is going to be the reporting. So the first area of reporting that I'm going to introduce you to are the analytics. The analytics are really a consumption metric. These tend to be very popular with HR folks in the event that you're tying learning perhaps to quarterly goals or quarterly objectives. We're also going to see an organizational leaderboard to see who's consumed the most content. However, how this can be incredibly beneficial to you and your organization is going to be the ability to drill down into various learning activities. As I drill down, the leaderboard will update with me. So now that I've clicked into exams, I can see any user that has taken any exam. But if we have an aggressive certification that we are trying to achieve, I can find that certification exam, see who has taken it, along with some high-level statistics, and perhaps most importantly, the last score they received. In the event that your end users are fortunate enough to receive an exam voucher from you or from their company, this is a very good way to confirm who is ready to receive those vouchers and who might need to take the exam a couple more times within our platform. This ultimately brings me to the skill profiles I mentioned earlier, which is going to be a true differentiator for us here at Cloud Academy. You might recall that I mentioned the pre-assessment is capturing a baseline understanding of where skills lie today. As the end users are consuming additional content, specifically completing exams, completing quizzes, validating their hands-on labs, we are constantly gauging how those skills are growing across time. This tends to be very, very well liked amongst the C-level suite of folks because this is a tangible way to showcase how skills are growing. Perhaps even more importantly, however, we also have a leaderboard that will update with us as we drill down. Now that we can drill down into various platforms, we're also seeing a far more exhaustive list of domains, along with concepts and software tools, including Ansible and Docker. So we'll maintain that we are focused on AWS for the short term. So I'm going to drill down into AWS. Now the system is showing me my top domains within AWS, how we're scoring across all domains. The skill growth rate has adjusted. And now we're seeing our top AWS users across our entire organization. We can take it one step further and drill down into security for AWS, for example. Now we're seeing the platform subdomains along with the services and how we're scoring across those. Once again, the skill growth rate and the leaderboard will update. So we can see who the top users are within the space of AWS security. Perhaps if you are assigning mentors or tutors, this is a good place to check first. And perhaps even more importantly, you're going to be able to differentiate across teams. So this can be incredibly helpful when it comes time to assigning the right team to the right project. This concludes the administrative side of the platform. I am now going to transition to the end user experience. To do so, I'm going to click on Dashboard near the top left corner. All end users, once they log in, will land within their own individual dashboard. If assessments have been assigned, the Assessments tab will be visible, and I'll be able to jump right into those assessments. The activity tab has a bit of a Netflix feel. It will absolutely allow you to easily jump back into anything you've started. And based on your consumption within the platform, our data science team implemented a recommendation engine that will customize the top picks for you. Lastly, you may have seen it when I initially landed here, but once training plans are assigned, we're going to be able to track our own individual progress. We've even added a little bit of gamification here so that team members can view each other's progress and try to keep up with one another. We also have a downloadable mobile app, both in iOS and Android. So whenever we can all begin commuting once again, this can be a really good way to consume content on the go. And also a recent addition was the ability to self-assign a training plan. This is particularly helpful if there is a topic that I'm very interested in that I might not be using in my day-to-day work just yet. You can absolutely self-assign yourself a learning path or training plan. The most powerful part here, however, is going to be the individual user skill score. So as we can see, we are drilling into Michael Taylor's skill score. Administrators can also drill down to this level of detail. Just like before, we have the same capability to drill down across platforms, domains, concepts, or tools, along with an organizational leaderboard to see the top 10 users within each area. As you can tell from here, we really want to empower the end users to take control of their own learning. So from here, I can drill down into, say, Azure. Now I'm seeing those platform domains once more, how I'm scoring, or I can improve my score directly from here. I can also prove my skills on the various domains over here or browse training directly related to it. I'll drill down once more into databases. Now we're looking at those subdomains and services, as I mentioned, along with the top users within Azure databases. So a little bit more gamification to hopefully encourage them to try to achieve a higher level on the leaderboard. This ultimately brings me to the end user experience and what they will be viewing within a training plan. I also really appreciate that Cloud Academy, we try to be as transparent as possible regarding upcoming training. So you can see that here. Our library is in fact public facing, so I highly encourage all of you to come in here and peruse at your leisure. But if you're curious about what's coming down the pipeline, you can click on there and see what was just released or what is coming soon. As you can see, all of our content is broken down into various categories. So you're seeing all the public cloud vendors across the top and also Alibaba, along with some emerging tech and other things like DevOps. So I'll continue with this AWS example. Once I click into that category, now I'm seeing all of the various learning activities that make up this category. I can drill down one step further and simply focus on learning paths. Perhaps, again, we have an aggressive certification goal, and we're trying to get all of our folks to be solutions architects. So clicking into this learning path, you can see here that I'm able to send courses and exams directly to my phone. We're communicating difficulty, duration. This can be tied to CPE credits, and they'll also receive a certificate of excellence upon completing the learning path. Here in the center, we're going to see a high-level description along with learning objectives. If we continue scrolling, we'll see the various steps that make up this learning path. And down towards the bottom, we do really pride ourselves on updating our content. So we're going to be very transparent around what has been updated and when. Now for the end user experience, I'll jump into a course first. These courses are instructor-led. Sometimes they'll be drawing diagrams. But one of the key pieces here is that we understand that end users don't want to receive a 2-hour video and be expected to view it in one sitting. So instead, we've broken down these courses into smaller, more bite-sized modules, as we call them, so you can better plan for how much time you'd like to dedicate to courses. This also has a fantastic effect on the ability to search our library. So if you're specifically looking for how to monitor EC2 instances, you can search for this and jump right into this course. You can also either speed up or slow down the videos and access the transcripts if you'd like to follow along. Once we've consumed some coursework, we are ready to begin practicing those newfound skills within a lab. So these labs are absolutely going to be another differentiator for us here at Cloud Academy for two key reasons. First, as you'll see here in a second, is our labs are text-based. This makes us far more agile when it comes to making updates as those come down the pipeline. So as you can see here, we are now looking at a guided lab. So we are seeing detailed instructions, including how to log into the console, which brings me to my second point of what makes this so unique, is you are going to be using Cloud Academy provisioned credentials to access the management console. This is all included in the cost presented to you or that you may have seen. So I'm going to open this environment. When I myself am making my way through these learning paths, I like to go split screen. Makes it a little bit easier to follow along. But as you can see over on the left, we simply need to copy and paste the username along with the password. Let me try copying it up. And just like that, we have spun up our own instance of an AWS management console. Now, the last piece that I'll mention regarding the labs is that we do bridge the connections between the console and the lab environment. So once the end users have to complete various steps within the console, they're going to come across different validation checks. So this will either confirm or deny if this was completed. Additionally, it's important to note that these validation checks are what are being fed into the skill profile to show the change in that skill score. Last, but certainly not least within the learning paths, are going to be the ongoing assessments. If we're talking about a certification path, the final exam in that learning path will mirror the real world exam in terms of time allowed and number of questions. Additionally, we have a very vast library of questions. So even if your end users pass this assessment the very first time they take it, we highly encourage them to take it multiple times so that they can cycle through different questions and be better prepared. In fact, some customers have said that our exams are more difficult, so they are over-prepared, which in my opinion is even better. Jumping into the assessments, you'll see that we're going to make our selection, sometimes one, sometimes two, sometimes three different answers. But what I really want you to take away from here is that I mentioned our data science team earlier. They are incredibly talented. They implemented an item response theory within the ongoing assessment. What the item response theory tells us is as we respond to these first 5 questions, if I got all 5 correct, then I'm going to see a slight increase in the next set of questions. If I didn't get a single one of them correct, I'm going to see a slight decrease in difficulty. In this fashion, we are continuously gauging how the skills are growing and changing across time. We also encourage end users to skip any questions that they don't know the answer to. All of us can get lucky and answer a question correctly by guessing, but the system will assume knowledge that you may not actually possess. Lastly, we will give you an opportunity to revisit skipped questions. But most importantly, you'll get something very similar after completing a lab, but it's going to be the after exam report. I knew I wasn't going to do too well, but that's just fine. What I really want you to take away from here is the transparency around which skills were assessed, how our own individual score changed, along with some call to action here to either improve my score or browse training once more. So the system is now assuming how my knowledge is growing and changing across domains, which is rolling up into my overall AWS score, which is then rolling up into my overall skill score. Lastly, but certainly not least, we are going to communicate not only the correct answers, but we're also going to provide an explanation and link to external documentation where appropriate. That completes the end user side. I'll pause one more time for questions here before wrapping it up with customization. Doesn't appear to be any new questions, so we can begin wrapping this up and talk about Content Engine. Now, what makes Content Engine so unique is that this is going to give you complete control over customizing absolutely anything. This is including customizing labs to reflect the steps that you want them to reflect, along with being able to mirror any stacks to ensure that they're getting the appropriate hands-on experience. A very common use case, however, is a lot of our clients have a security document that they want their employees to read, so they can upload that document or any flat file for that matter. They can generate questions against it, throw it into an exam, and then add that exam into a learning path. So to modify this learning path, I'm going to click on this Create button. All of our Content Engine areas will allow you to build completely from scratch if you already have the materials in question, or you can duplicate absolutely anything existing within our library. So perhaps we'll use this DP900 learning path. Now we're seeing the back end for the description, including the landing page description and difficulty. But at the next step is where we can really start making this our own. So now we're seeing all of the steps that make up this learning path. I can remove anything that is not valuable, that is not being used in my day-to-day work life, and really trimming it down to ensure that they are getting only the most pertinent topics. But perhaps more importantly, I can also add steps here. As I mentioned, perhaps we have a resource that we want to add, so we can add a couple of resources. We customized an exam, so we're going to add that exam. And we even customized a hands-on lab. So I selected multiple items, and you'll see that they're all listed down here. Now we can begin rearranging and ensuring that these steps are taken at the appropriate time. Last, certainly not least, the final step will show you the alignment of skill objectives. Because I duplicated content, I'm seeing which skills are included. Based on what you've added, you can add additional skills, or we can even customize this list to include your own organizational skills that you'd like to track. And just like that, I have customized a learning path and I'm ready to publish it so my end users can begin consuming. So that completes the platform demonstration. I'll pause one more time for any quick questions that may have come up. I do see a question for what kind of files can be uploaded into Content Engine. I might have mentioned that a little too quickly, but you can upload any flat files into Content Engine. So MP4s, PDFs, PowerPoints, Word documents. There are no additional questions. So I'd like to take this time to remind you to please answer our end of webinar survey. You'll see it as soon as you close it down. We love hearing any and all feedback because we're always looking to improve. And with that, I'm going to leave you with a very big thank you once more for your time and your attention. And I look forward to hopefully speaking with you in the future.